Yeah.
who have exercised, have used marijuana as a sacrament of the church, of different churches and different religions.
Yeah, totally. The whole history, and that's the history of the Church of the Universe as far as we're concerned.
There's a long history.
Yeah, well,
whereas the history going back, pertaining to marijuana per se, as Hansingler and Murphy here in Canada, is a rather recent thing.
Yeah.
So we're saying, look, let's look back at this whole history about religious history, and you show me where the harm is, and they can't. It's not possible for the Crown to establish harm over those thousands of years.
Yeah. Now,
religions are there, and the people are there. Didn't all die off.
That's right. And this is historical fact. We've been lucky enough to have at least 3 professors so far who are willing to testify on our behalf in this court case, Professor Carl Ruck and Professor Blaise Staples, 2 of the individuals that helped coin the term entheogen, which refers to the use of psychoactive substances in religion, as well as Professor Thomas Roberts, one of the only individuals teaching a course on psychedelics in all of North America in a university. So we're stemming up to have a pretty good case here, and also we've recently come across a report prepared by the Justice Department, Canadian Justice Department, that refers directly to the biblical references to cannabis, and we hope to subpoena the author of that report to this court case as well. So I think that we have a pretty good case. What are you feeling about this particular situation? Do you think we got a shot at this, Ed?
Do I feel that you have a shot at it? Well, I would say that, in my opinion, okay, and my opinion's a little biased naturally.
Yep.
I would say that we have a very, very, very substantial chance, and between 75 and 90%.
Wow, well that's a pretty high thing, because I know that you can usually be a bit of a downer sometimes when it comes to the optimism end of legal outcomes and stuff like that. You're not known for being overly optimistic, let's say.
No. I've never been overly optimistic when you're dealing with the lower courts.
Well, I hear you. I think that I agree with your estimation. I have a positive feeling about this. If it doesn't work this way, we'll approach it some other way. But I think that this will be off to a good start, and they're not really going to even know how to deal with it. They're just going to be so unprepared for this documentation of history, for this presentation of the religious argument, and for the suggestion of maybe a further exemption for another member of the Canadian public that's not necessarily medical, but is deeply spiritual and is deeply well established. And Ed, I look forward to working with you on this, and we'll see what comes of this in the year to come.
Okay.
Thanks for talking with us today, Ed.
Right then, fine. Bye-bye, thanks.
Bye-bye. With me on the line now is Tom Brown from Arkansas, and Tom and I go way back. When did we first start communicating, Tom? You got any idea about that?
As I recall, Sam Smith, who was one of the original incorporators of our church in March, was our international connection. He was the guy that knew all the people at Normal, and all the other organizations had been to Amsterdam, and he put us in contact, I believe, or somebody that he put us in contact with got us together probably in April of 1994.
Wow, that's pretty early, more than 10 years ago. And it's pretty amazing, really, when you think about that, because I myself was living in like a tiny little fishing village in Vancouver Island, Ucluelet. I didn't have the internet or anything like that. And I was putting together these wacky outlays of cannabis and religion that eventually led to green gold. And Tom, you were out in Arkansas or something.
Yeah, in January of 1994, I had a real classic personal experience of the Holy Spirit. And as a result of that, started incorporating and making a physical presence for what we called our church, which had originally been founded in 1988 by other Arkansans here, which was a hippie, marijuana, ecological community church. And that's when that thing got started. And then out of that, Sam Smith, Charlie Smith, and others, we got together and incorporated this church, and then we got into contact with you guys and found out that what we were doing here independently was hooked in with all kinds of things that were going on all over the planet, and you were one of the main sources for that.
Yeah, it's funny because like I myself had a religious experiences, as I'm sure we've discussed, where I felt that cannabis was a tree of life, and that led to my writing the books and stuff, and independently I went into somewhere to buy a hemp shirt one day, and I saw a poster on the wall of Brother Walter from the Church of the Universe, and it said, Tree of Life, Sacrament. And I was like, whoa, those guys know, you know, like it's like something started spreading around the planet, you know, at a certain time or something. Now tell me, what was the relevance of your own religious experience regarding cannabis?
Well, several things. First of all, I was raised Catholic, and in 1968, I smoked marijuana for the first time in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, with my girlfriend at the time, and I was afraid that I was going to become a drug addict. I was a real retarded, moralistic, snotty kid, and very ignorant. And I knew that where I was totally untenable. I had to change. I had to develop something outside of my frame of reference. And so this was a nice, safe opportunity, I thought. But I was still very worried about, I'm going to smoke this pot, and I'm going to become a drug addict. That's what I've been taught. Oh, this is terrible. But the first thing that came into my mind after I smoked the pot and started getting high, sitting in the circle with these other young folks, was this is the communion sacrament that I always looked for as an altar boy in the Catholic Church. And then that really confirmed that I was stupid and crazy, because to think about a drug being associated with a communion sacrament was utterly ludicrous. So therefore, obviously, this thing was crazy. But of course, you know, marijuana's not crazy. It's true, and I kept following it. And pretty soon, I'm in prison, and I'm reading your book and finding out about the Catholic Church and Mary Magdalene and the use of marijuana as a religious intoxicant at the altar of the incense. And I'm going, oh, I'm a Catholic. I died then, and I've been reborn now. That's why I thought about marijuana as a sacrament the first time I smoked it.
Interesting. Now, for the record, I think I knew you before you got arrested and busted, and you told me you were going to be planting this crop and pursuing like a course to getting cannabis legalized as a sacrament. And I believe I tried to dissuade you from that path, didn't I?
All of the people that we talked to did.
Yeah.
But one of the things is that we kept hearing, you're trying to legalize something. And what we kept saying to folks, which has remained true ever since, we aren't interested in legalizing anything. What we are doing is true. It is from the relationship that we've had with each other and with God as manifested through the Holy Spirit all of these years. Whether or not the government ever gets around to recognizing that marijuana should be legal and be sold or distributed or whatever is one thing. What we're doing is pure, true, and we're not backing off from it.
Now, Tom, you had a big piece of land back then as well, right?
I had a 40-acre farm. I deeded over 1 acre to our church.
Did you lose the whole 40-acre farm or just the 1 acre?
All of it.
All of it. That's a real tragedy. And how many years did you spend in jail?
I was sentenced originally to 10 years, and under the federal sentencing provisions, I would have had to serve 80% of that time. While I was in prison, the Congress changed the weight of marijuana plant from 1,000 grams to 100 grams, and the judge in my case, acting on his own motion without allowing me to come into court and ask for anything or make any rebuttal or anything, he just presumptively changed my sentence from 10 years to 5 years. I served 53 months, which is 80% of that time.
Wow, that's a long time in itself.